the yeshiva had really students. And the Bochum were all involved in recreation because singing and marching and baking and everything. So the Rebbe Rashab instructed his son, who was a Menachem, that in preparation for Pesach, all the heavy load, the heavy work, should assign to his son. And the Rebbe, of course, did that. And this Bocher did not object. He accepted. That was the first break, He accepted. And he really sweated the whole preparation of Pesach. He really sweated hard. Then by the Seder, the Rebbe Rashab used to come down the second Seder and sit with the Bocher. By the Seder, the Rebbe Rashab turned to the Frierdiker Rebbe and he says, take a look. All the coarseness has been washed off and a human face has surfaced.
So the workshop, is it elevated a little bit, the work?
You heard what I said, right?
It's been washed off.
The coarseness has been washed off and the human face has surfaced. It turned out that Bocher became a very big chassid. He was a very good move. So what's the story? That's it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let's go and talk.
Yeah.
To emptiness. So, as we always trying to do, speak on the Seder, based on the Sichos from Rebbe, and then try to draw some pertinent directives and understanding of ourselves. And as we always point out, the most important part of learning in general, learning Chassidus in particular, is to find yourself in the Chassidus that you learn. This Seder is called Tzav. Tzav means instruct or command. This is not a very common expression in the Torah. Normally, Tzav means Hashem tells Moshe to tell Aaron to do such and such. And usually the expression is Hashem, Daber al Aaron, speak to Aaron, or tell Aaron. Tzav means command or instruct is not a common expression. It's not totally unusual, but it's not common. And Rashi right away comments right on this posuk. Rashi says Tzav. Whenever it says Tzav, this implies special encouragement. And the encouragement is that it should be something retained immediately and l'doros and for all times, for all generations. And the Gemara actually says, the Chazal say, I don't remember where exactly it is, that something that was given b'tzav, that was instructed in this manner, using the term tzav, command, was something that was much more assured that Yidden will follow through than in any other expression. That tzav was instrumental somehow, as we shall discuss, to get it done. And the Rebbe explains there's an obvious difference, but we will simply discuss it. That when you say daber, speak, or emoir, or tell, say, so essentially you speak to somebody, you say, speaking to somebody about doing such and such, it has the implication of like a suggestion. Tell him this would be the right thing to do, but then ultimately the doing it remains in the choice of the person to whom you're speaking. Of course, he knows that you want him to do it, but it's not in the same force, I can say, that it comes from the commanded straight to the recipient. It goes through his own mind and he makes a decision. It's like going through his choice process. When you say Tzav, it's a direct connect from the commander to the recipient. Even though, this is an aside, even though that we know that everything in the Torah, anything that a person does in the Torah, is left open to the person. It's called Bechira Chofshis. It's called free choice. Free choice does not mean that he is left, choose your own way. This is not that way. It means, no, this is what Hashem wants you to do. But He's not going to compel you to do it. He's not going to force you to do it. You have to do it on your own. Knowing clearly that this is what He wants you to do. This principle is the basis of what's called schar v'oinish, reward and punishment. If a person does something under duress and he's forced to do it, then the reward and punishment is inapplicable. He can be punished for anything that he has not done volitionally by choice. He cannot be rewarded for anything that he did without being involved. So Tzav also does not imply a compelling element, but it is closer to it, and it is more effective to bring out by the Yidden a reaction of obedience, of following through, than the other expressions. What's behind this? So the Rebbe explains of these three expressions of Emoir, Daber, and Tzav. They represent the three midas, the three attributes, the three qualities of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. Emoir is what's called Loshen Rako, in a soft form. That is a Chesed approach. Daber is a hard statement. Dibur Loshen Kosher. That represents union of Gvura. Tzav is the middle path. This is called Tiferes, which we'll discuss. It's between and incorporates both Chesed and Gvura, and beyond incorporating Chesed and Gvura, it has a quality of its own. As a matter of fact, the reason it incorporates both Chesed and Gvura is because it has a superior quality that automatically incorporates the other two. So, since every mitzvah, the word mitzvah means a command, and the mitzvah means also, the word mitzvah also means connecting. That when Hashem gives a mitzvah, thereby there is a connection formed between Hashem and the Yidden who received the mitzvah. These connections, there are three different kinds of connections. There's a connection on the basis of Chesed, of Ahava. There's a connection on the basis of Gvura and Yira. And then there's a connection on the basis of Tiferes and Rachamim, which we'll discuss briefly. Normally, in our perception, when a person does something by request of someone else, there has to be something that justifies his connection and wanting to follow through on the other person's request. Either it is ahava, there's an affection between the two people, and he wants to do what the other person asks him to do, or there is yira. There is yira, there is fear, there is awe and respect. This is all from the Gvura side. So this Ava and Yira elements, these two kavim, these two paths, they lend themselves to a clear definition, and we can readily understand what's bringing about this action. If there is an affection, there's a connection, an emotional affinity between two people, then he will do what he's asking him to do. Or whether it is ahava or yira. These are the kind of interrelationships that we say can readily be understood and can be described and explained. Then there is this tzav, there's what's called the middle line, the kav ha'emtsoi. It's called kav ha'emtsoi, the middle line. This middle line does not have any definitive quality. You can't say it's not because I love you, it's not because I fear you. There's a direct connect person to person. I can't even explain what it is. This is called kav ha'emtsoi. There's an expression in the Chumash that is used extensively in Hasidus, in Kabbalah, to describe this middle kav. By the Mishkan, you all learned that Mishkan there were these boards on the northern side, on the southern side, and on the western side there were boards, and these boards were in addition to Adonim and so forth, there were braces that were put through and held the boards in place. There were 3 sets of braces along the height of the board. One on top, one on the bottom, one in the middle. The set that's on top and the bottom was made totally differently than the one in the middle. Everybody's aware of this? The one on top and the bottom, number one, they had rings external to the board that was attached like a regular brace, a ring. They were attached to the board externally, 2 rings for each board, and this brace used to go through this ring. And that's how the boards were held together. The middle brace, it did not have external rings. The middle brace was put right through the boards. The boards were half an amma thick, and they would grind, whatever tools they used to make a hole through the board, a straight hole, and these holes were exactly facing one another, and the boards would and this brace would go right through the board and through the middle of the board. B'soy hakrosh. That's one difference. Another difference is that the top and bottom set of braces were divided into 2, meaning it didn't go along the entire length of the wall. The length of the wall on the south and the north was 30 amos long. Each brace was 15 amos. It went from one end to the middle, and then the other one was from the middle. And the same thing on the western wall, it was 10 amos, so it was 5 and 5. So altogether on each wall, this constituted 4 braces, each one covering a half of the wall. The middle brace was mavriach min hakotze el hakotze, went from one end to the other. From the top, from the one end to the other, all the way through. First of all, it went through the board rather than external. In other words, you couldn't even tell externally from outside that there is a brace in there. It was completely inside. And additionally, it was one brace going from one end of the wall to the other. The expression in the Torah describing this, number one, it says, "Abriachit atichoin b'soich hakroshim." It was b'soich hakroshim, inside the boards, rather than by the side of the board. And the other thing, mavriach min hakotz el hakotz. It goes through, it braces from one end to the other. See, this explains, you know that everything in the Mishkan clearly has very profound and representations, implications. And see, this explains that these are the 3 kavim: Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. The middle brace represents what's called Tiferes, and this is a quality that knows no limits. Normally, in Chesed, in Ahava, there is a point where how far I will go for this. Or in Yira, there's a limit how far I will go for it. When it comes to the midah of Tiferes or Rachamim, there is no limit. It's Mavriach min hakotzer hakotzer, going from one end to the other. I will try to elaborate a little bit to get a little handle. This is clearly a very broad subject in Chassidus. In simple terms, the Chassidus explains that there is chesed, kindness, and gvura is strictness. So, one would be kind to someone if this person deserves to be kind, deserves to be treated with kindness. If the person does not deserve to be treated with kindness, then he will not relate to him. Similarly, when it comes to yin from gvura to strictness, if this person, if you give him a command, a strict command, and he will follow through on it, you will deal with him. And if he will not, you will just punish him and get rid of him. This is the attitude of chesed and gvura. Then there is the middle perception, which has a different attitude completely, where you do not look at the person from the perspective of his qualities. Is he good? Is he bad? Is he smart? Is he foolish? You look at the whole entity, and you recognize that there's something real in this person. And as a result, this is called rachamim. Rachamim means that there is something very valuable there. I can't even put my finger on it. But this is a real human being, and therefore I'll deal with it, and I'll try to develop it, and I'll try to help him come out of himself, and so forth. This is called rachamim. Give me a very so to speak, rough example. Mentioned many times, you see a drunk lying in the gutter, and you come over to the drunk and you say, come, I'll take you home, I'll give you a shower. He says, leave me alone, I'm happy right here. Leave me alone. What would be your attitude?
Okay. I'll do you any favors.
Right. So from one hand you say, okay, no, that's what you like. You're down, you're a gutter person, fine. On the other hand, you turn around and say, wait a second, this is a human being. Of course, he is lost. He doesn't know himself. But from a godly perspective, from a truth perspective, not from the perspective of your kindness or strictness, from midas, but like person to person. He's a human being just like I am, and he's got the neshama. I can't let it go like this. I can't let it go. I can't force him. He doesn't want to go. I'm just going to stay there. I'm going to see what happens. I'll make sure that something happens ultimately. That's the rachamim element. Even though from his behavior perspective, he doesn't deserve it. But we're going beyond his behavior. You're going to identify the real human being, the real entity, which does not express itself in behavior. It's just the identity of the reality itself, of the person. You know that I hate to bring in these very unpleasant illustrations, but it hits home. The Nazis, Yimach Shmoma, had this idea. Any person who is not up to human standards, get rid of him. He lowers society. He's a burden. He's an abomination to society. Get rid of him. They didn't hesitate. And of course, we all recognize that this is a capital crime. Just because a person is not up to par, a person is a drunk, does he deserve to get killed? Right? So this is a completely different perspective. This is a perspective that reaches, so as the expression is, mehakotzer, from one end to the other, from the highest sense, from the highest, in terms of the human being, the highest sense of the human sense. Now it's way beyond the attributes and the feelings of compassion and so forth, the feeling of goodness and kindness. It goes all the way to the very sense of reality. What is a human being? And it devolves down to the lowest level, where you can find a way to deal with the simplest and the lowest fall down that a person can reach. This is called Kav Hamtzoy, the middle Kav. This Kav Hamtzoy represents what is called emes, a truth. It says Torah is in Kav Hamtzoy. Now this is not definable by quality, but this relates and goes straight to the heart of what is the reality. What is the reality? The reality is that everything comes from Hashem. And in everything there is a godly spark. Regardless of what level, where it is. like the Rambam describes, which you mentioned many times, that even if a Yid says, I defy the Torah, I don't want to do what it says in the Torah, what does the Rambam say? It's not true. What do you mean it's not true? That's what he says. He says that from the perspective of his chesed, I don't like it, or I like something else, or Gvura, I'm angry at him, I'm angry at God, so I don't want to do it. Whatever, some attitude that a person has. So from the perspective of his behavior, from his experience, he develops all kinds of different reactions and attitudes. But from the perspective as to what he is in truth, what he is as an entity, as a human being, as a Yid, there he cannot possibly lose his connection to the Medrash. In essence, he is still connected. And not only is he connected, it's not possible to sever that connection. Like we pointed out many times, that if you meet a Yid who is totally strange to Yiddishkeit, married a Goyke, whatever it is, totally strange to Yiddishkeit, and you walk over to him and say, you're not Jewish. He'll be very upset, very angry. What do you mean not Jewish? Wasn't that? He married a Goyke, so he has children who are not Jewish. If you tell him that your children are not Jewish, he'll be very upset. But you don't care at all. You don't care about Yiddishkeit. You married outside. What do you care? No. It's one thing in terms of my behavior. It's another thing in terms of my identity. I cannot possibly lose that identity because that's the reality. This is the principle that's expressed with these three expressions, forms of Emoir, Daber, and Tzav. Emoir and Daber, and they said this represents Rosh Harako, Ein from Chesed, where Hashem relates to Yidden in a Chesed manner or on a Gvura manner, which elicits a response by Eden, also of Chesed and Gvura. Yes, I will do, and so forth. But these are all things which have their limit. It's based on how I feel and what my response is. Then there is Tzav. Tzav is where Hashem tells Moshe, command. Command means that you are immediately connecting and directly, by implication, by inference in the word itself, to the commander. There's a difference between saying, tell them in my name. So you telling them in name. But it's you telling them. Tzav, command, is directly drawing a direct connect, a straight line from the commander to the recipient of the command. Because Tzav literally represents this straight and unmitigated connection between Eden and Hashem that cannot be severed. Because it's not dependent on attitude, it's not dependent on understanding, on feelings, and dependent on behavior. Like the Gemara says, Afa pi shachoto Yisrael. Although he sinned, he still remains Yisrael. How can he remain Yisrael if he sinned? The answer is, he sinned means he did not follow through on the command. But it's Yisrael because he has that command. The command was given to him. That has not been retracted. Therefore, that connection remains. This is the Tzav element. A Yid who disobeys the Torah command exponentially beyond, higher than a guy who never got the command. Because he has a command, so he has the connection. He's responsible for the obeying and following through. So he doesn't follow through, but the connection is still there. Much, much beyond one who has not received the command, whereas to whom the command doesn't apply. So this comes to expression in the word Tzav. Tzav means that Hashem says, tell him, I'm here and I'm commanding him to do this. This is a direct connect from the Meibashim. And as a result of that, the Gemara says that whenever it says Tzav, this is something which is much more assured, much more guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed because it always remains in the hand of the Eden he can break any rule if he chooses to. Because the Bechira is in his hand. But nevertheless, because of this special way that it's expressed, the special connection that Hashem had put into this, it has much greater assurance that this will be followed through. But this is not something that Yid will disobey.
Can you repeat that? Why? What is the reason that it has more assurance that?
Because excuse me, in a sense, Hashem has put himself on the line in this. It's one thing to say, this is the right thing for you to do. I think this is what you should do. But then you're doing it because I think it's the right thing for you to do. When you say, tell them to do it because I say, then you do it because I say it. It's a connection directly to the neighbors, to Hashem. So when you are reminding a Yid of this middle, of this kav, of this, I said before, of this quality, of his direct connect to Hashem, not through any through kindness or gvura, not based on any explainable quality of their connection, but a dynamic connect between Yid and Leibushin, that goes very deeply in the Yid. And he cannot that easily defy it. Like I said, tell a Yid that you're not a Yid, he will rebel. You know the story of Mendel Futerfas. I mentioned from time to time, everybody heard of Mendel Futerfas. Mendel Futerfas, when he came back here from Russia, he immediately said that everyone at that time was already encouraging people to do mivtzoyim, to go out and have people put on tefillin, whatever. And so he came over, and he immediately set to work. He didn't have time to waste. So but he didn't know the language. So he couldn't talk to people and explain to them, feel this. So, people would walk around, let's say in a bus or in a train, whatever, try to explain to people. He had a totally different approach. He said, you know what I mean?
I'm just imagining you tefillin.
He said, I Jew, you Jew. I tefillin, you tefillin. And guess what?
Sometimes less is more.
I had to tell him, your great-grandfather used to put on tefillin, and so Just the I Jew, you Jew. Once you say I Jew, you Jew, it melts away. That's it. There's no resistance to that. And then you say, I'd feel, you'd feel. Yeah, okay, I'd feel, you'd feel. This is the principle, I says, and the Rebbe explains. This Tzav, if you learn the Rashi says, Ein Tzav elazivus miyad ladoiris, that this is something which will be for all generations, it will never dissipate, because this is something which is which transmits from one end to the other. It engages from the highest to the lowest. So, there's much further in the Sikha, but I want to utilize some of the time for us to reflect on us here. There are many aspects, many elements that come to mind when you speak from that perspective. Number one, so to speak, the practical thing. The practical thing is, what is my relationship to the yeshiva? What am I doing over here? Oh, well, I came to study, I came to become a scholar, to get to know things, and who knows, maybe I'll become a rabbi someday, or a lecturer, or a professor, I don't know what. You could look at it from say the Kavi Yamin, from the Chesed quality, from the Gvura quality. Chesed quality is, this will increase my knowledge, this will build my intellect. Gvura quality, this will tell me what I may do, what I may not do, will keep me in line and so forth. These are all valid reasons. These valid reasons are practical, and they have utility, they have purpose. What really keeps us here is something different. Every Yid has to experience being a Yid 100% of the time. And that's in the yeshiva. This was beyond any practical gain, any kind of developmental thing. I know, I'm sure you know, but just to kind of elaborate on it, I have Ingulai that I learned with for years, literally for years, decades. I have a group of people that they learn with. And they're very smart people. And they've gained an enormous amount of knowledge and insight and so forth. And I can till this day tell one who had a yeshiva experience, even on a minimal level, one who did not. The yeshiva experience is what's called saturation. Real living as a Yid. 100%. That sets a person in different place in the world. Then afterwards, it doesn't mean that it will eliminate every kind of difficulty. He's still going to have all these challenges. And he's still going to fail and recuperate and fail and recuperate. All of these things are going to go on. But even when he failed, he'll know who he is. He will never lose sight of what am I? Who am I? So this is from a very, from the get-go, from the first step into yeshiva, to understand what it is that we're trying to do here. Even today there is, they have the methods of teaching a language. A language is a matter of learning words, pronunciations, sentences, and so forth. So they found, just like a child learns a language without being taught. How does he learn a language without being taught? Huh?
Practice, repetition.
The child doesn't practice anything.
So you're already the ability.
He's living with this language. So.
You see, this is called saturation. He is in it. It's interesting, I for myself, I can tell. I was born in Russia. And I left Russia when I was 8 years old. And after that, I did not speak Russian at all. Now, till then, I knew Russian. I spoke, what to call an 8-year-old Russian. But then, thereafter, I didn't speak Russian. Till this day, a natural response to a word is in Russian. In other words, if you say this is called such and such, in every other language except Yiddish, of course, it's a word applied to the object. But what is the object itself? It's the Russian word. Of course, this is right part of you. It's not an interpretation, it's not a translation. We need to know, we need to bring out and to experience the principle that we are Yidden, and that Torah and Mitzvahs is us in a manner that is not anything that is superimposed and add on to our being. And that quality you can gain only in a yeshiva environment. It's not measured by how much you know, how much you excel, in terms of how smart you are. It's not even measured on that, how well you do in your studies. But this is what you live. It's like a child absorbing everything automatically. Provided that we understand this and we don't resist. See, a child doesn't resist. A child sits there, and as the mommy speaks, the child repeats. Right? Repeats the same words. Why? Because if mommy says, that must be the right word. So this is part of that requirement. Being in yeshiva does not mean study. There's an interesting expression. In the secular world, the term is always study. Like a student, he goes to university to study. He goes to the library to study. In yeshiva and in Torah terms, we use a completely different term. Learning. We don't study. What's the difference? Studying implies that I'm reading something and I'm judging. I'm studying it. Do I agree? Then I agree. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. I accept or I don't accept. That's studying. Learning means, no. I'm absorbing I'm learning what is being given. That's learning. that is, so to speak, the principle of being in yeshiva. And one has to understand, this is the way you absorb the spirit and what is in the principle, the most important contribution to your life that the yeshiva can give is this. In addition to the fact that it affords you with the opportunity to learn as no other opportunity that you'll have in life, to learn for a whole day and so forth, with chavrusas, with teachers, but that's definitely, that's the chav yamin and chav small, so to speak. This is the daber and emir. But the tzav, the real connection is in this element. This is, as I said, to start, this is the first step into yeshiva. The same, as we already said, that when we are learning, we're not studying. We're not studying, even though it is imperative that we learn to the point where we understand what we're learning. But not chas v'sholem from the perspective of doubt, of scrutiny. All questions that we ask are questions that will help us understand what we're learning. Not questions, should I learn it or not? God forbid. Or do I agree with it or not? Those questions don't exist. That's called learning. Learning means, yes, definitely you have to ask questions. But it's not out of skepticism, God forbid. You just learned, I'm sure, when you talk about Amalek and Purim and so forth, this is the biggest enemy, our biggest enemy for all times. Now the Rebbe said himself, described him as my enemy for always. That's Amalek the skeptic. Because there's no limit to the skeptic. He can creep into anything. You open up a siddur, somebody shows you, this is an aleph. This is an aleph. The Amalek would come and say, prove it. Innocent question, prove it. How do you know it's an aleph? Well, for 3,500 years we knew that's an aleph. How do you know that 3,500 years ago it was correctly identified? Yeah, you picked it up from Abraham, but who knows that he had it right? Right? This is not what we mean by questioning. But to question, we definitely have to try to understand. And it's called learning. Again, it's never studying. By us, in Torah, we have this one cardinal rule. If I don't understand something, then who is at fault? What has to be corrected? Rashi or me?
You.
I have to be corrected. And if I'm learning Rashi, and Rashi wrote it from, in a way that I should be able to understand, and I don't understand, then I say, what's happening to me? Not, how come Rashi wrote like that and I don't understand what he's talking about? What's happening to me? Right? In other words, I'm not even open to learning. I have closed myself off, and it doesn't reach me. Because otherwise I would have understood what Rashi is talking about. Therefore, what do I have to do? I have to start opening up. And learn and allow the so to speak, the richness of it to enter into my mind and eventually open up my senses. That is another element of this Tzav, of this direct connection. Direct connection means I'm connected before I even start. I'm not connected because it makes sense, because I like it, I say Abba or Yira, but because this is the reality, this is the truth. Just to elaborate a little bit more, again, the yeshiva life, it's a privilege, it's a very unique privilege. Even though, Baruch Hashem, today there are yeshivas, the yeshiva world is not poor in terms of availability. There are many yeshivas and many yeshiva bachrim. Despite all that, even at this stage of our history, that has developed enormously, still the yeshiva people who had yeshiva experience are still a small minority from the general Jewish population. And when somebody on the outside who has not had yeshiva experience meets up with somebody who did have yeshiva experience, he gains a certain warmth that he doesn't know that exists. He doesn't know that it exists. And the yeshiva bachar, anybody, even though we all have limited experience, if you meet up, you right away see there's a tremendous difference. So, I was talking about before, just being in yeshiva, the behavior in yeshiva. The behavior in yeshiva, the keeping the sdorim, the seders of yeshiva. I always speak about, I don't know exactly, I'm sure that I'm talking to responsible adult people who come on time and so forth because they value their time. But I know that this is also a problem in some instances. The being in Seder in time is also part of the Tzav. One could say, look, the yeshiva Seder is I should be 7:30 in the morning by Chassidus. Why? So I should learn an hour and a half Chassidus. Fine. I'll do alternatively. I'll also learn an hour and a half Chassidus, but I'll learn it in a different time. I'll learn it at night before I go to sleep so I can sleep in. I'll learn it. So in terms of learning, he has satisfied the demand. But in terms of the real participation in yeshiva, he has not. And that is more important than the learning hour. Someone, a bacher, once wrote to the Rebbe, I think from Eretz Yisrael, I remember reading it, from Eretz Yisrael, wrote to the Rebbe, that somehow, for some reason, the Seder in yeshiva, the way the Seder of learning in yeshiva, does not grab him, does not interest him. It doesn't speak to him. He feels that he can do much better. And therefore, he plans to set up a Seder of his own. If I don't remember correctly, but I don't remember exactly, but I think he actually lays out certain points. I mean very strict Seder. A Seder of his own, but here how he's going, a Seder Hayom, 24-hour Seder on his own. And he writes that I'm hoping and I'm sure that this will lead me in the way Oile that goes up base scale into the house of God. You know, it's an expression, Oile base scale. This will lead me in the path that will Oile base scale. That's what he wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe has responded as follows. He says, lead me the path ha'oila beiskel. So the Rebbe erased the words ha'oila beiskel, and he said, the path, the be'er shachas. Lead you the be'er shachas.
I didn't catch it.
What?
No, I didn't hear what.
Lead me the path, the be'er shachas. He leads you into the ground.
What does?
This path that you will describe. Instead of everything, it leads you on derech or el beiskel, it'll lead me in the derech, it'll lead you to the derech, the beis shachas. Okay. That was the Rebbe's response. The Rebbe didn't give him any explanations. This way you learn less this, you learn more this, you'll have habrusas, you'll have this, none of the above. It's just that the whole principle that you're going to go on your own path, not in the yeshiva path, you are going down the drain. So again, you have to understand, there is Emoir and Daber, but then there is Tzav. Tzav means like this, we're in Yeshiva. The Yeshiva is established by the Rabbeim. The more we participate in the Yeshiva the way it should be, we're connected directly to the Rabbeim. This is the real thing. This is not due to the practical results. You know, I have 2 hours to learn this, so I gave this. 1 hour to learn within the Seder Yeshiva is worth more than 5 hours learning on your own. Not academically, perhaps, but in terms of its meaning to you, and its depth, and its effect, and its establishing itself in your own mind, you know, being absorbed by you, it definitely means much more. Along these lines, I'm sure you can each think other principles, other things where this is applicable. Basically, this is the message from the Sikh, message from the Tzav, and this is the message that I would like to impart here to you. We were taken out of Mitzrayim, and we were brought out from slavery into freedom. We were brought out from slavery into freedom, not into Hefkeris. Hefkeris means no man's land. We're never in no man's land. We're taken out from Pare into Hashem's land, word. Freedom, in the sense that we're in no man's land, is not a human state. It's for animals. It's a jungle. The human being came to the world right in the beginning, right away with a task, right away with a function. He never experienced hefker. And it's not human. Because a human being If you put him into the world and say, what's the world about? Nothing. So what am I doing here? Right? There's always a context. The context is a godly context. And we don't have to seek to free ourselves from that context. The more we participate in this context, the more we absorb it and we, so to speak, live it down into our very fabric, the more human we become, the more Yidden we become, and the more alive we become. Contrary to what would seem, you're giving up your freedom. No, that's where you gain freedom. That's when you allow your neshama to surface and to live. Hefker is not a place for the neshama. Hefker is a place for animals. So, I think this is going to be our last session before Pesach. So therefore, we should have a kosher prayer on Pesach. And we should reflect on Pesach. What is the significance of freedom? What does freedom mean? Accept freedom in its true significance. And that way, you'll gain a real resource, a real life from Pesach. God did not have to put us into Paro's hands and then take us out of slavery. He could have kept us free before to start with. What's the point? He took us out of slavery, made us free. Who put us in slavery in the first place? Thanks a lot. What's going on? God wanted that we should recognize that freedom is not the absence of slavery, what we had before. Freedom is being completely engulfed and connected to Hashem. And that you can only experience through this whole process. So maybe should help we should have a kosher and a Pesach and Pesach in all respects, begashmis and beruchnis, and with Hashem's help, this should bring the Geula Shlema.